Good evening. Good night. It is 10:56 p.m. Tuesday, March the 27th, 2018. Broadcasting from Vancouver, Canada. My name is Sydney Winston. And today, right now, I'm broadcasting late at night simply because I want to do a piece. This might run a while, but I might chop it up. I don't know. Anyway, I want to do a piece on politics in South Africa. Now, I have on Facebook, I have a group called, well, it doesn't matter what it's called. It's specifically for people who grew up in the neighborhood that I grew up in when I was a kid, or growing up, from a kid to a young man. But what struck me as really odd is, firstly, right now in South Africa, there's political, there's political fodder. Okay, there is a land expropriation without compensation motion before Parliament. From what I understand, an issue with Constitution, with I don't know, Clause 25 or whatever of the Constitution is being debated. Whether it's, I don't know exactly what it is, but the point is, I am being excoriated by the members of this group for talking politics. Are you fucking kidding me? Talking politics is what people do 24/7. If you grew up during apartheid and you still have that mentality that apartheid is a taboo thing, then you're fucked up in your head, because it's not. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. So, I have quite a few of these videos lined up. But what I want to do quickly is just throw the link for this. I just want to throw the link for this into the Facebook group. So if anybody's up, you know what I mean, they could listen in. So let me just throw it in there. I'll be one moment. Alright, there you go. Alright, so I've posted it. Now, like I say, I got quite a few of these babies lined up. I am monitoring the outside chat, so if there's anything going on there, I will bring it up. I'll show you the what's going to look like. This is going to look like this. Oh no, that's not what it's going to look like. That's the first video. It's going to look like this. Okay, so there's me and the stuff, and then over here, can you see it? Can you see my cursor? No. But anyway, on the left there, that's the chat window. So if you've got anything to say, any questions, any comments, if you want to throw some tomatoes, you throw it in there, okay? Back at me. Right, so like I said, I've got some videos lined up, not in any particular order. Some of them are relevant to me specifically when I was living there, with the circumstances and so on and so forth. But I just want to say, from sincerely, when I lived in South Africa, certainly from about the age of 14, 15, I hated the government. I hated the Boer, the Afrikaner, the conservative, the Dutch Reform, the Herstichte, the Verkrumpte, just the kind of uptight Christians that we see here in North America now. That's what those asshole Afrikaner boers were like. You know, the police and the arrogant cunts, every one of them. Anyway, I hated them. I just absolutely hated them. I couldn't wait to get the fuck out of that country. And it just so happens that with this B.J. Forster Prime Minister, he was a huge arsehole. Huge arsehole. And you'll see. He's in one or two of those videos. But he, to me, was doing totally the wrong thing. Totally the wrong thing. He was being autocratic. You know, it was kind of at the same time in Paraguay and Argentina and those places where dictatorships were springing up in South America, and it kind of caught on. I don't know, there was some kind of a camaraderie between the Paraguayan dictator and the B.J. Forster cunt dictator. But anyway, let me rant no further and put on my eyes, and let's bring in the first video. I will put all the links to these videos below, in the comments below, or in the details below, I should say, and you can have your say. Now, the first one is looks to me like a comment. I haven't really watched any of these except for one or two of them. I'm trying to keep them short. I try to keep everyone as short as possible. So choosing just the short ones. If 15 minutes is long. So this one's just under 10 minutes, and it's called South Africa, Apartheid, and the Future. So maybe we could get this one going.
Horrific and graphic story about an elderly white couple in South Africa that were brutally tortured for hours and then executed. I couldn't stop thinking about it, especially once I discovered what a widespread problem this is, which I'll go into a bit later. But first, contextualizing these racially motivated murders requires an understanding of South Africa's complex history. I learned very little about apartheid and South African history in school, but what little I was taught focused on white oppression and dominance and was absent of nuance. European settlement began here in the 17th century. The Cape Colony was established as a layover and supply port for ships of the Dutch East India Company trading with Asia. It gradually became a settler community and home to the Afrikaners, a European, predominantly Dutch ethnic group. There was a French occupation of the Netherlands in 1795, which prompted Britain to gain control of the South African territory as a way to stop any attempts by the French to get to India. The Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1814 gave the South African colony to the British, and the Afrikaners weren't entitled to return to their homeland, which was typically an option for colonists from other countries in the event that the surrounding political situation deteriorates. One historian summed this up very succinctly. He said, quote, "Herewith the Dutch finally deserted their kin in exchange for coin. There was no attempt to guarantee Afrikaners' right to residence in Holland or anything of the kind. They were simply sold to the British, lock, stock, and barrel. To this very day, the Dutch do not accept that Afrikaners, despite being their direct descendants, have any right to return to the country that placed them in Africa." Around the same time that the colony was established, the Bantus had basically eradicated the tribes near the colony since they had superior weapons and used iron. And the Bantus are a widespread and nomadic group that spans Central and Southern Africa and tend to not be as territorially minded. They're more group-oriented. As long as sufficient land was available to travel, they had only very vague conceptions of borders. So we have the British ruling and using a typical divide and conquer strategy, stoking conflict between blacks and the Afrikaners to avoid either group from uprising. And although there was a racial element to much of this conflict, we can't forget the tribal elements as well. Between 1779 and 1879, British and Dutch colonists fought 9 wars against neighboring black tribes, usually initiated as a response to cattle theft. These were groups in perpetual struggle with one another. According to another historian, for leading thinkers in the NP, such arguments almost completely miss the point because the security of the Afrikaners as a dominant minority, and not as a race per se, was what concerned them. The Cape Town, Stellenbosch axis of the National Intelligentsia, which was the most influential lobby in Milan's MP, almost without exception defended apartheid not as an expression of white superiority, but on the grounds of its assumed capacity to reduce conflict by curtailing points of interracial contact. The granting of political rights to the Bantu, of the kind which would satisfy their political aspirations, was altogether impossible in a mixed community, since such a step would endanger the present position and survival of the European population. If this danger was to be avoided, and at the same time the Europeans were not to violate their own conscience and moral standards, a policy of separate development would prove the only alternative. The Europeans knew that the Bantu would slaughter an entire people because they had done it before, so they felt compelled to protect their people, since democracy, while they were in the minority, would surely mean that they would be killed. To be clear, I'm in no way defending apartheid. I just want to provide some context surrounding it so that we can see the whole picture. Apartheid, for the most part, was a strategy for conflict reduction through separation after what seemed like endless, irresolvable conflict. Now that we have a better understanding of the hostile climate, racial tensions, and battle for territory that led to apartheid, we can take a look at some of the data surrounding the apartheid era, which was 1948 to 1991. The black population tripled from 1946 to 1991, while the white population was on the decline during this period. The life expectancy in South Africa went from 38 in the 1940s to 61 in the 1990s at the end of apartheid. And since 1994, it has plummeted to less than 50 years, and this is the lowest life expectancy in the world. Why is this? Let's first discuss some of the economic issues. South Africa is in a serious credit bubble, and there is massive inflation. Further, it is the 9th most unemployed country in the world, with a whopping 26.7% of the working age population unemployed. So it is no surprise that it is supposedly the biggest welfare state in the world. Look at South Africa's dependency ratio. It's 3 people to 1 taxpayer, and it's unsustainable. And he's right, it is unsustainable. 6% of the population contributes 99% of all tax revenue. Additionally, in 2003, the broad-based Black Economic Empowerment Program made it mandatory that every department of a company is demographically representative, 75% Black. As a result, because Blacks were deprived of education under apartheid, there is a huge skilled labor shortage, and it is very difficult to get a job if you were white. White teachers were paid to retire, and Black student exam results plummeted. Without improving education, there is no way to fix a broken society. So naturally, as a result, the number of people living in absolute poverty has doubled since the African National Congress came to power in 1994, according to the Cato Institute. Poverty and crime have a strong correlation, and this is one of many reasons that South Africa has the 9th highest murder rate in the world, and might rank even higher because, according to the South Africa Institute of Race Relations, half of the crimes in the country are not even reported. South Africa's murder rate has climbed 4.9% to 51 people killed every day that we know of. Since 1990, race has not been included on the official death record, so it is very difficult to get a solid number on the proportion of crimes committed against whites versus Blacks. But whites, particularly farmers, are clearly being killed at a disproportionate rate, which has been all but outright sanctioned by South Africa's president, Jacob Zuma. Jacob Zuma said about land expropriation, quote, "Once the audit is completed, one law should be written so that we can handle land restitution without compensation. The necessary constitutional changes will be made. The Black Party should unite on this issue." Also, we have literally seen him singing about killing the white farmer. Additionally, the ANC is under pressure from the radical economic freedom fighters led by Julius Malema. Mr. Malema has been traveling the country urging Black South Africans to take back land from white invaders and Dutch thugs. He told Parliament this week that his party wanted to unite Black people in South Africa to expropriate land without compensation. People of South Africa, where you see a beautiful land, take it. It belongs to you. So now in South Africa, it is twice as dangerous to be a farmer as it is to be a police officer. The murder rate is 99 per 100,000, which is 3 times the murder rate of all of South Africa, which, remember, is 9th in the world. The vast majority of South Africa's farmers are white, considering their history of colonization. We have seen the South African president calling for the killing of the white farmer, and these murders are marked by a unique and shocking level of brutality. I think it seems impossible not to concede at this point that these murders are racially motivated. There have been between 4,000 and 5,000 farm murders since the end of apartheid. Many of these involve hours of torture, rape, abuse, and children and the elderly are not exempt. Very often, little is taken, contradicting the South African government's claims that these are not racially motivated crimes, but instead are motivated by greed. Mr. Potgieter, a farm caretaker, was stabbed and hacked 151 times with a garden fork, a knife, and a machete near Lindley in the Free State, the agricultural heart of the country.
Potgieter is wrong. Just want to say. Where the hell? Yes, Potgieter, Potgieter. The very first time I ever heard that pronunciation of Potgieter was when I was in North America and I heard it on TV. In South Africa, it's an Afrikaans name, so it is pronounced Potgieter. Potgieter or Potgieter. Potgieter is more kind of real, authentic. So sorry. Oh, shoot. I got the wrong guy, yeah. All right, lady. Go for it.
His wife, Wilna, and 2-year-old daughter, Wilhelmine, were both made to watch him die before being shot in the head execution style, all for pocket money and possessions of relatively little value, a too common story in South Africa's rural areas. Additionally, a note was found on the gate of the farm written in Bantu, quote, "We have killed them. We are coming back." Some white South Africans are scared, and rightfully so. There's even a petition with 61,000 signatures to allow all white South Africans the right to return to Europe. I understand that there is some hope for South Africa under the Democratic Alliance, but I'm not very familiar with this party. The fact of the matter is that whites are in grave danger in South Africa, and their complicated history of warring and the subsequent apartheid has pushed racial tensions to combustion. Paired with a failing economy, an AIDS epidemic, a huge welfare state, and a staggering crime rate, particularly against whites, I don't see a future for whites in South Africa, irrespective of their claim to the land. And I certainly am not the only one asking this question. I've been made aware of an NGO that I would like to refer you to. Their mission statement states that their purpose is to allow the safe return of people belonging to the Dutch diaspora. The NCD will support diaspora people in every step of the process, including societal integration. I think this is such an important project, first and foremost because these people are truly in very serious danger. But additionally, as Muslim migrants with no shared cultural values flood into Western Europe, can you imagine what a breath of life it would be for Western Europeans to have a population surge of people with the same ethnic background and comparable value systems? If you think this is an important issue, please donate to the NCD. I have linked their page below. Thank you for watching, and as always, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye. That was lovely. So that was the first one. And that was a point of view, which, valid or not, is a point of view. Okay. Oh, the next one we got is Julius Malema himself. Now, Julius Malema, to give you a quick, bio as far as I know, I got to admit that I was wrong. I kind of thought he was my age for some reason or other, and I'm over 60, so turns out he's like not even 40. So sorry, Julius. But anyway, Julius Malema started out as when I first came to when he first hit the news, and I became aware of him. He was the youth leader of the ANC, big buddies with Zuma and everybody, and he fell out. He fell out because I think he saw the corruption of what was happening in the ANC. So he started his own political party, the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, and they are extreme on the sort of communist and share the wealth and blah blah blah. But there's one thing that Julius Malema really is a little bit of, I don't want to use the word enigma because that kind of gives him a bit of a but a communist person with communist ideals, share the land and all this kind of stuff, yet he still believes in God. This is what I don't understand about Julius Malema, and this is why as much as I admire the man, I don't trust him. Anyone, to be honest with you. If you're watching right now, I don't trust anyone who believes in God, because that just shows how kind of narrow-minded and cognitively dissonant they are. So that was my introduction to Julius Malema for you. And this is Julian Malema. Smart guy. This is a very smart guy. Watch him talk.
If Motsoaledi was such a minister as projected by you, the media, if he was such a good person, why is the health system collapsed? I called him, I said, Motsoaledi, where I come from, my grandmother was telling me that there used to be a clinic in Zone 1. It was not built by the ANC, it was built by Apartheid. Where she stays, there was a clinic built by Apartheid. And the ANC went to close the Apartheid clinic. That clinic is not functioning. The EFF in my ward marched day in and out to demand that that clinic must be opened. And then when we say to you, the Apartheid was much better than these people, you think, no, these people are exaggerating. We speak into the practical things that we see. Here is a clinic under Apartheid, functioning. Democracy comes, the clinic is collapsed, closed.
Wow, that's horrible. Pretty damn horrible. So yeah, that was Julius. It was only about a minute long. I didn't realize that. A minute goes so quickly. Who knew? Okay, let's move right along. Who we got next? Let's
Thank you,
go somewhere.
Trevor. I enjoyed.
Now there's this guy, and I admit I haven't watched much of him. His name is Trevor Noah. Apparently, well, I've watched some of him, like about a minute, so I know what he sounds like, what he looks like. But I haven't heard any of his shtick or his comedy, because he's pretty much a mainstream media type of guy, late night, a host of some late night show. I don't know. So I'm pretty much going to see him for the first time. Let me just bring this. Let me just slide this in, and it looks like it's a Miami book fair. Miami-Dade College. It's called Were South Africans Better Off Under Apartheid? And I'm assuming that this lady is about to ask Trevor Noah that question.
Thank you, Trevor. I enjoyed so much hearing you. My name is Shanka.
Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Same. I led a tour group in 1994 to South Africa, and we visited Soweto, and the children in the school sang to us, and we danced, and it was very, very moving. But what was interesting was we had a native South African tour guide helping us, and he surprised me, alarmed me when he said there were better times during the apartheid, because now most of us are unemployed and we've been fired from our jobs because they have to give us fair wages. And I was thinking, it's like in the Hebrew Bible in Exodus, when the Jews escaped from bondage and slavery from Egypt, and then they started complaining in the desert, we want to go back to slavery. That's when you were speaking about freedom being so difficult. So I would like your comments on, because I heard it more than once from other Black South Africans that they had better times before.
I will say this. I cannot speak for everyone in South Africa, and I acknowledge that through a combination of the hard work of my parents, luck on my part, and hard work, I know that I'm in a position of privilege, and so I cannot speak for everyone who may not have the same things that I do. But I do know this. Freedom, as I say, is hard work. just because you achieve it does not mean now everything is going to be good. And a lot of the time, the fault falls at the feet of those who delivered the promises of liberation.
Yeah.
If we look at the stories across the board, and we even see that in America now, the promises that are made by the politicians are those of a better life, are those of a life that will instantaneously become beneficial for all. You know, and in South Africa, that's what the ANC promised at the time. They said free housing and free everything, and you know, it was this world that was promised, that it was like, now that you have defeated, you know, the oppressor, everything will be open to you. You will get to enjoy the spoils. But the truth is, what you have achieved is the ability to work for the spoils, and it's a tough thing. And those liberators now have to work on providing those opportunities. Think about it like this. In South Africa, we had a country that was designed for a minority that didn't even make up 10% of the population. This is everything: housing, plumbing, the electrical grid system, the highways, everything. Schools were just designed for a tiny piece of the population. And so once the country is now free, obviously that means you're not going to be able to get everybody to the same level immediately, and that means that there's going to be a lot of capital that needs to be injected. That means there's going to be a redistribution of wealth that needs to happen. That needs to be, there's going to be a lot of systems that need to change in order for that change to take effect. But when people say to me it was better, I struggle to grapple with the idea that it is better to be enslaved. You know, I think one of the closest parallels, and by no means am I saying it's the same thing, but it's when I read stories of prisoners who tell the story of how, because of how hard we make it in society to reintegrate, some prisoners would rather stay in prison. They go, I get food, I get a bed, I know what my life is, I get to go to a library, and I'm part of a community. And when you set me free, I see the world as a prison. And so the question we should be asking ourselves is not, was it better under apartheid? It's that, how do we create more and more opportunities, not just in South Africa, but even in America, to free those people, or to give them access to that freedom? You know, because in the book I have a quote where I say, you know, they say, teach a man to fish, and he will fish, or he will eat for a day. I mean, it's give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish, and he will live forever. But one thing I always think of is, I go, if you don't give him the tool to fish, all of that information is useless. You know, so the rod is as important as allowing him to do it.
Mr. Prinsloo, what is the basic philosophy underlying apartheid as a way of life?
We Europeans who've lived in this country for more than 300 years have come to a conclusion which is strange to some people in the Western world, namely that the peoples of Africa, and so the Bantu people of South Africa, have a beautiful civilization of their own which is worth preserving. There are many facets of this civilization. For instance, the social warmth of the Bantu peoples, which we Westerners can rightly envy them. Now, we also have a peculiar Western adaptation to Africa. Therefore, we can say that the Bantu peoples are a flower, and the Western peoples are a flower, each with a beauty of its own.
Mr. Prinsloo, as you are no doubt aware, most criticism of apartheid outside the Union is based largely on moral grounds. For example, the morality of separate residential areas in the cities of the Union, past laws, lack of voting rights, and so on. How would you reply to this?
As far as residential areas are concerned, the practical situation is that until about 10 years ago, there were no residential areas for urban Bantu people. It is only in the last few years that such areas were set aside on a planned basis and developed at a terrific pace, as you can see all around you. This housing scheme, which now houses more than 30,000 urban Bantu who work in Pretoria, was a bare plain a mere 4 years ago. I think that is a complete answer to the so-called immorality of separate residential areas. In the political field, we are creating an outlet in that we are proclaiming Bantu authorities in all the major Bantu areas of the Union. We have already brought into life more than 300 such authorities where Bantu who have the inclination, the training, and the moral courage to start developing their own people can do so with all possible assistance from the government.
Is the government convinced that the African wants and accepts apartheid as a development policy?
For obvious reasons, many opponents of this policy tried to influence the Bantu people in the other direction. And like all new philosophies, like all new policies, we had to put our case to the Bantu people. And I can safely say today that the Bantu people are accepting the policy of self-development, which essentially is apartheid essentially is in an ever-increasing tempo. I feel confident that the Bantu leadership of Africa, rural and urban, will, by the turn of next year, show in a most marked way that they are satisfied that this policy leads to their salvation.
policy is one which is called by an Afrikaans word apartheid. And I'm afraid that has been misunderstood so often. It could just as easily, and perhaps much better, be described as a policy of good neighborliness, accepting that there are differences between people. But while these differences exist, and you have to acknowledge them, at the same time, you can live together, aid one another, but that it can best be done when you act as good neighbors always do.
At the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington, a film on leadership featured documentary footage of Senator Robert F. Kennedy in 1966 as he visited South Africa during apartheid. VOA's Caroline Turner talked about that time with the documentary's director.
RFK in the Land of Apartheid is the title of the documentary, which captures Senator Robert F. Kennedy's visit to South Africa during the worst years of apartheid in 1966. Kennedy was invited by students at the University of Cape Town. The film captures the connection between the civil rights movement in the U.S. and the anti-apartheid movement, capturing Senator Kennedy as he made the dangerous journey without security or government support. The South African government was a U.S. ally during the First and Second World Wars, but feared U.S. criticism, according to the film's director, Larry Shore.
Thought that Robert Kennedy was going to be the next president of the United States in 1968, and they just didn't want to alienate the possible future president of the United States.
Shore was a young student in South Africa when Kennedy visited. He says the South African government made a mistake
by not meeting with him. It gave his trip much more power and credibility in the minds of the very people that the South African government didn't want to hear him. So I think it was a mistake on their part. He was offered no security, and it was quite courageous. He was quite in the open, and this was only 3 years after his brother's assassination.
RFK in the Land of Apartheid highlights whites in the anti-apartheid movement.
It was never a struggle against white people. It was a struggle against white supremacy and a white racist system.
The film captures the sense of hope that someone important in the outside world had discovered apartheid in South Africa and was doing something about it. Most important was Senator Kennedy's attitude toward average black South Africans that was in sharp contrast to the way they were treated by most white South Africans.
I come here this evening because of my deep interest and affection for a land settled by the Dutch in the mid-17th century, then taken over by the British and at last independent. A land in which the native inhabitants were at first subdued, but relations with whom remain a problem to this day. A land which defined itself on a hostile frontier. A land which has attained rich natural resources through the energetic application of modern technology. A land which was once the importer of slaves and now must struggle to wipe out the last traces of that form of bondage. I refer, of course, to the United States of America.
John Daniels was the National Union of South African Students Vice President at the time.
It's this very clever introduction where he says, I come from a country, etc., and you think he's talking about South Africa. And you think, goodness, this is really bold stuff. And he says, of course, I'm referring to the United States of America. And so he was saying there are parallels in the historic experiences of dealing with race and race issues.
Historians consider the so-called Ripple of Hope speech the most important of Senator Kennedy's life, as it captured the essence of what he stood for.
Each time a man stands up for an ideal, or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance.
In 1966, Nelson Mandela was in prison. Other opposition leaders were in exile. Senator Kennedy's visit to the band chief Albert Luthuli, who was president of the ANC and a Nobel Prize winner, captured world attention and gave people hope.
Robert Kennedy just chose to go and visit him. He didn't ask permission. He was in Durban. They rented a helicopter and off he went. That gave enormous visibility to the ANC, the African National Congress, Nelson Mandela's party, at a time when they were completely crushed down. So Robert Kennedy meeting with him and giving him the kind of visibility, and at a time when it was very, very difficult for them.
Kennedy's visit gave a person like myself great hope. It was as if somewhere you'd seen the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm sure if my father and Robert Kennedy were together now with the new South Africa, I can't even express it. My father didn't drink, so they wouldn't toast with the champagne, they would toast with water.
RFK in the Land of Apartheid captured in 1966 those moments that opened up people's imaginations that they could perceive of a South Africa that would someday be free. Carolyn Turner, VOA News.
The South African police resorted to shotguns in the Johannesburg township of Kagiso today, trying to separate supporters of the ANC and the Zulu group in Carter. It was the 11th day of fighting, and with more than 500 dead, the government stepped in, returning to the police many of the powers they had under the state of emergency lifted just 2 months ago. Law and Order Minister Adrian Flock announced the powers would be effective in 27 townships. In a few days, the government says it will drastically increase the police and army presence in the townships. They've also been granted a wide immunity from prosecution in powers that will remain in force for at least 3 months.
That's where people, I think plus minus 8 people were killed in that. But the most guy who was known to be shooting, it was a soldier from Queenstown called Mokawen. He was coming from Queenstown. And another one.
I just realized that my microphone wasn't on for the last few times that I was talking. So sorry. I can promise that it'll never happen again.
Tuesday dawned. The death toll was almost 10. The battle was now at its height, with the Duncan villagers pitting their sticks and stones and burning barricades against the tanks and guns of the security forces.
That's fucking terrorizing these guys. Look at this. Holy shit, man. Oh. What a piece of shit. That's a police state. Whoa. Out of control. 3 minutes. What's going to happen? We're going to jump out running and charging in the crowd. That's what they usually do. I remember. This must be in the 80s. There they go. That's what I remember from 1976. Oh, look at this. Ah, oh, ah. Look at them running when they're holding their hats in their hands when they're running. What idiots. Look how controlled the crowd is. Somebody said, don't throw stones at the police. So they stopped throwing stones at the police and they started chanting and clapping and stuff. Impressive!
listen here. This man shot that guy and he's my family. He came to vote here. He came to vote here. And they pushed me. Don't fucking push me.
Fuck. Into the van. Fuck, man. That was a little bit traumatic, wasn't it? Okay. Wow, that bummed me out. Let's see if W. de Klerk can make me feel a little bit better with what he's got to say. I doubt it, though.
Ago on CNN, you made comments which were very badly received in South Africa because they were interpreted as being a partial defense of separate development, which was a foundational principle which underlied apartheid philosophy which you and your party supported for years. I would now like to give you the opportunity to clarify that, firstly, and secondly, knowing what you now know with the benefit of history on your side, how much do you personally regret joining a party like the NP?
Let me firstly thank you for the opportunity, but I don't need it. I've already rectified it. And if you followed the follow-up of also a telephonic interview between me and Christian Amanpour, she also allowed me space to rectify it. It was misinterpreted what I said. I was trying to say, when I was a young man of 21 and 25, why did I support separate development? And part of it was that I then believed it could bring justice to everybody in South Africa through the nation-state concept. I then believed, and this is what was misinterpreted, as everybody now believes that the two-state solution is the right one for Israel and Palestine, that a 9 or 10 state solution is the right solution for South Africa. Soon after I entered politics, and in my years as a backbencher already, I came to the realization it's not working. And especially since the early 80s, I became convinced that where we stand is morally indefensible, and that apartheid was wrong, and that it couldn't be improved, it had to be abolished. And I played a leading role in abolishing it. With the benefit of history, I made a profound apology in front of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, apologizing for the pain and the indignity that apartheid has inflicted on all people of color in South Africa, saying it was wrong. So, with the advantage of hindsight, apartheid should not have existed. But let me add, and once again, I don't want to be misunderstood as in the case with Christian Amanpour. We in South Africa did not invent apartheid. The colonial powers did. The colonial powers implemented policies which were equally unacceptable from a moral point of view, as we talk today about what was morally right and wrong, as was done in terms of apartheid. All the colonial powers, Great Britain, the Spanish, the Germans in Southwest Africa, the Belgians in the Belgian Congo, all over. Africa was, in a sense, raped by the colonial powers. And what was left behind wasn't full-blown democracies. It was underdeveloped political systems or no proper political systems at all. Yes, some education was brought, etc., etc. So this problem of racial discrimination is and was a worldwide problem. And therefore, it's not only in South Africa that self-examination and self-analysis must be done about what was wrong in the past. all the developed and former colonial powers should do the same inner searches of themselves.
You know something? That's pretty good. Ooh, very good. All right. I am going to end it there for this particular segment. It's like we're an hour in, and that's enough. I've got a whole bunch more, probably another hour show lined up. So I will do a part 2. This is going to be a part 1. And I will indicate as such once I've cleaned it all up, and once it's processed and ready to be published. And then I will be back with number 2. Part number 2. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe, tell your friends. Share the video with your friends. Also tell them to subscribe, to like, all this kind of stuff. Let's get our point of view out there. There's no reason not to talk politics. Politics is fun, but it's talk. That's it. Talk, talk, talk. Okay, part 2 coming up at some point. Hopefully real soon. Take care.